Our opening song this morning is played by today's featured musician, and that's Jennifer McMillan with Just As Long As I Have Breath.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
As we join together in worship this morning, we pause to recognize the land where we gather has borne witness to thousands of years of Indigenous history, culture, and spirituality, and continues to do so, which provides a rich and fertile ground for our community and our lives. For this, we are grateful. Our church building and our community are located on Treaty 6 land. In this wonderful world of online worship, we come together from Treaty 6 and many other places. Regardless of location, we commit ourselves to the creation of equitable, just, and compassionate relationships with the Indigenous peoples of our home communities. Good morning and welcome to Westwood Unitarian Congregation on this beautiful snowy morning, if you're not shoveling, that is. It's one of many Unitarian Universalist congregations across the continent and around the world. My name is Dean Wood, and I'm your service leader this morning. Our speaker is Reverend Ann Barker. Our musicians are Jennifer McMillan, Rebecca Patterson, and Zo Tobi. Numerous volunteers make this Sunday service possible, and we thank them and our musicians for their contributions. In particular, we thank Ilara, Stefaniuk-Gaudet, and Bill Lee, our techie magicians, who are making possible the service in a virtual space. In the midst of the tumult that surrounds us, today is a special day when we pause, breathe deeply, and center our minds and hearts on finding personal meaning in the upcoming Remembrance on Wednesday of human conflict and its many victims. Our words of welcome today are expressed in a poem by Reverend Ray Drennan. As you are welcome here, visitor, friend, or longtime member. You are welcome here, with your family, or your partner, or your lover, or alone. We joyfully welcome you here. You are welcome here as believer or doubter, as joiner or loner. You are welcome here feeling a part of us or not, full of energy or plain tired, seeking a vision or a rest. You are welcome to join us as you are.
Now is the time for our shared chalice lighting. So if you have a candle or a chalice nearby, you're invited to bring it forward. We are learning over time that lighting flames in unison, each of us in our own locations, helps to bring us closer, both in mind or in spirit. Our chalice lighting this morning has a guest speaker, and I'm delighted to share her message with you. It is an honor for me to introduce one of my Canadian colleagues, Lieutenant Nicole McKay. Nicole is in training to be the Canadian Armed Forces' first ever Unitarian Universalist military chaplain. Stationed at CFB Borden for many years, Nicole has recently transitioned from working in military communications to full-time study for the chaplaincy. Through the magic of the internet, she is also concurrently serving a practicum at the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Winnipeg. And I believe she'll be leading a Remembrance Day service at the Church of Winnipeg on Remembrance Day proper. So if you're interested in attending a Unitarian Universalist Remembrance Day service, there will be one at the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Winnipeg. All are welcome. People often experience Remembrance Day as a conflictual occasion. There's a balance, the impossible balance between what is necessary and what is destructive. People sometimes think this occasion marks a glorification of war, which is not its intention, but that concern makes sense. Now, in a world struggling between ideas like defunding the police and how do we respond to a rising fascism, there are more questions than there are answers. I want to say that in this service entitled Hungry for Peace and Justice, that I appreciate how hard it is to hold these two ideals at the same time. This is not a service about solutions. It's a service about remembering who we are, where we come from, where our ancestors have been, what our descendants who follow in the wake of our decisions will face. The questions we wrestle with here at Westwood are the same questions my clergy colleagues are holding across the country. We talk about the complexity of our relationships to organizations and structures that hold power, how to appreciate the value of the Canadian military while also maintaining a critical mind, how to understand the current truths, gifts, challenges, and contradictions of our Canadian Armed Forces. Nicole has been gracious and generous, as well as honest with us, and the conversation is ongoing. For these next 3 minutes, I invite you to lay down that complexity as best you can, to open your hearts and listen for Nicole's pastoral message. Lieutenant Nicole McKay.
I am Lieutenant Nicole McKay, a Unitarian Universalist seminarian on the path to ordination and a chaplain candidate in the Canadian Armed Forces. I offer you these opening words from my heart to yours as we mark Remembrance Day. We gather to remember those who could not grow old and those forced to grow old long before their time. We gather to mourn and grieve with one another all of our losses. The people, the stories, the loved ones, and the futures that could have been. We gather to do the hard work of facing the difficult realities of our present and our past, where there is conflict, violence, war, and hatred. We gather to hold space for silence as we try to make meaning of our history to help us work for peace and justice today. We gather to rekindle our source of hope for our future by recognizing in one another our shared humanity and our concerted commitment for a better tomorrow. We gather because we need a community to do all of this holy work.
Just like our shared chalice lighting, one of the serendipitous things happening this morning is that congregations across our vast country are hearing Nicole's words. We light our shared chalice this morning in the spirit of remembrance, that we remember where we come from, those who have gone before us, and those who have suffered on our behalf. That we remember all who live today, live with both the benefits and consequences of what has brought us to this moment, and that we remember those who will follow us, their lives shaped by our decisions, our actions, and our beliefs. Blessed be, and amen.
The lighting of candles of concern in celebration is a cherished tradition at Westwood, whether we gather in person or in a virtual space. We pause, reflect upon our week, and recall the milestones, the joys, concerns, and sorrows, the changes in our lives, as well as those who need our healing thoughts. Community is deepened by sharing with each other what is in our hearts. In our virtual world today, we can share our joys and concerns by typing them into the chat box at the bottom of the screen while we listen to How Could Anyone, performed by Jennifer.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
I'd light one final virtual candle for all the joys and concerns that remain unspoken in our hearts this morning. Please join me in reciting our Westward affirmation. May the light of these candles inspire us to use our power to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to serve the spirit of truth in loving affection and trusting hope. While we're meeting in a virtual space without the passing of collection plates, we remember that volunteer service and money are the essential elements that sustain our congregation and Westwood as our church home. We thank everyone who has generously pledged their time and resources for this church year. And during this time of virtual church gatherings, contributions can be made by a check in the mail or by e-transfer. We are now recognizing and celebrating each Sunday the programs, events, and activities happening within the Westwood community. This week, our video features children and youth at Westwood Unitarian.
Welcome! I'm happy you found us. My name is Ilara Stefaniuk-Gaudet. My pronouns are they, them, and I work with the kids and youth at Westwood Unitarian congregation. Hi! And my name is Bruce, and my pronouns are E and and I love visiting with you and making new friends. That's right, Spruce really loves to make new friends and answer any questions that you might have, and really loves to be supportive during difficult times and just being a good friend overall, don't you, Spruce? That's right. And because I like to be friends with many people, we have a story corner every single Saturday at 3 p.m. Mountain Time on our Facebook Live, and there's lots of good questions and conversations that are happening right now every Saturday. So if you have kids or you are a kid at heart, you can come and hang out with us there. Thanks, Bruce. That was a really good way of explaining it. We also have an amazing youth program called Cosmic Connections that meets on our Discord channel. The link is actually on the Cosmic Connections page, which is linked to below in the description. And we have a Minecraft server, and we've got board games going on, and there's lots of national events that are happening as well, including a popcorn theology once a month where we get together on Zoom. Calgary Unitarian congregation is hosting it. We watch a movie and then have some great discussions after. So we're really working hard to support you, even from a distance, when we can, and to be close in as many ways as we can. We're really glad that you found us, and we hope that you'll want to connect with us, because we definitely want to connect with you. Take care, stay safe, and be well out there.
Now I invite you to sing along at home with Rebecca in our offertory song.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
The line between good and evil, hope and despair, does not divide the world between us and them. It runs down the middle of every one of us. I do not want to talk about what you understand about this world. I want to know what you will do about it. I do not want to know what you hope. I want to know what you will work for. I do not want your sympathy for the needs of humanity. I want your muscle. As the wagon driver said when they came to a long, hard hill, them that's going on with us, get out and push. Those that ain't, get out of the way. These are the words of Robert Fulgham from the book, It Was on Fire When I Lay Down on It. I am moved by these words from Fulgham. They call us to participate, to be a part of the effort, to help with the forward motion, to move toward a collective goal. I chose them before we knew the outcome of this 2020 US election, same as we chose tender, caring music for this exact same reason, knowing that it was exactly this kind of effort that was underway amongst our neighbors to the south. People pounding the streets, knocking on doors, ringing phones, mailing thousands and thousands, maybe millions of letters and postcards to crucial swing state communities, pushing and pushing and pushing the wagon up the hill with no certainty of what would be on the other side. We spoke last week about choosing this month's theme, hunger, as a container for all the happenings we could not possibly predict. We couldn't possibly know last May where we would be this November. Where would the pandemic have taken us? Where would we be with the US election? What would Remembrance Day mean this year? I'd like to thank Dean Wood, my service leader this week, and Dennis Foth, who served in the role last week, for being gracious bookend anchors, bringing a presence of solidity and stability to this unstable week in history. It meant the world to me. And along with voices like Fulgem's, this service also features new young voices. You met Nicole earlier during the chalice lighting words. During a presentation for colleagues, she spoke to us all of some of the instability her military colleagues have been dealing with. Things like being called into the care homes in Ontario in response to the COVID-19 emergency. She was not on that mission, but she knew many who were. 3 poignant things rose out of her story for me. First, how horrific that situation was. And what a blessing it is that we had a team that we could immediately dispatch to take over when staff were overwrought with illness or trauma, or in the places where patients had simply been abandoned. Medical people, doctors and nurses, trauma specialists, service people who could clean and transform a disaster zone to some kind of stability. After years of us knowing that the situation in care homes was precarious, if not dire, the pandemic made the crisis immediate and visible to the world. And this is the second thing that stayed with me. While I struggle with the immense power that our military holds, it was that same power that was able to deliver a report to government, a report that could no longer be ignored. People have been sending up warnings for years, but the power of the military report carried a weight that would not let it be ignored any longer. The third meaningful thing was hearing about the power of presence, of having a military chaplain with them on the job. Nicole learned that the situation was indeed heartbreaking, and that the chaplain deployed with them brought support, comfort, assistance, and some relief. Whatever our thoughts about the values or the dangers of the armed forces, I am so grateful to think of this group of people being able to benefit in the near future from the gifts of having a Unitarian Universalist chaplain. The work Nicole is training for is profound. Who would need support and help with meaning making more than people deployed to war zones or peacekeeping, medical or disaster missions? What a treasure for so many to have a chaplain who is open to different spiritual and philosophical perspectives, able to straddle the gaps that so often go unsupported. Nicole shared some of the positive changes that have taken place in our Canadian military, changes that I hadn't anticipated. One example is how racism has now been clearly defined, and that acts of or expressions of racism are one of the fastest ways to be thrown out of the Canadian Armed Forces. That was news to me. As someone who is sometimes careless in my criticisms of structures and of power, this took me by surprise and invited me to remember that no system stands still. What I know in one instance does not necessarily hold true for the future or for all. Another learning for me was that one of the essential roles of a military chaplain, not only providing services and pastoral care and comfort and meaning making, is to be an advisor and support for the leaders in charge. I am so moved thinking about a wise and thoughtful being like Nicole being able to fill that role. I'm sharing these stories with you with the intention of holding some of the complexity of the situations we find ourselves in. It's too easy to paint all of something, all those who voted for 45, or all military, or all the protesters, with a simplistic analysis. We heard Joe Biden last night speak about healing, about not treating our opposition as enemies. about working through the suffering and divides rather than fighting about it and reinforcing them. It feels like wartime pronouncements from an incoming president, and it sometimes feels like war. And we heard Kamala Harris speak about the inspiration of challenging and crossing barriers and boundaries. I know I cried. But let's go back to that opening quote again. The line between good and evil, hope and despair does not divide the world between us and them. It runs down the middle of every one of us. I do not want to talk about what you understand about this world. I want to know what you will do about it. I do not want to know what you hope. I want to know what you will work for. I do not want your sympathy for the needs of humanity. I want your muscle. As the wagon driver said when they came to a long, hard hill, them that's going on with us, get out and push. Those that ain't, get out of the way. I love the one sentiment that we pull, or rather that we push together. And I also need to say that this isn't the only way community and change and transformation works. That what you understand and what you hope and your sympathy for the needs of humanity also matter. I can't easily dismiss them like Fulgham did in this piece. And that we don't always have muscle. We can't always push. Just like we can't always vote. Just like it may not be safe to speak out or to show up or to dissent. Like when it could cost a person their relationship, their employment, their freedom, or even their life. But still, whether we are able to push or to vote or to speak out, there is still always room for all of us. I need to start here because there is almost always someone in the room, someone who arrives to Sunday service who is fragile and tender, someone who may feel like they're hanging on by a thread, and that delicate thread may already be frayed. And I need to say it aloud today because sometimes we don't even know that we are that person hanging on by a thread until somebody asks us to do one more thing. And we look down and discover that we're dangling over the cliff. I don't know about you, but the waiting this week had me pushed right to the edge. It might be the case that while we may not be able to push the wagon, we may be able to walk on the side for a while, helping to make the wagon easier to move uphill. Or maybe we can sing a beautiful song to give those pushing a sense of support or of renewal or of hope. But even when all we can do is lay in the wagon, that too is a way of belonging. Please never forget that. If all you can do is breathe, breathing is enough. If you need a break to catch your breath, then a break is the right thing. If your knees don't work, or your back is tired, or your heart is heavy, let us carry you over the hill. It is almost always true that once we crest the hill, there is relief. And if there is no relief, then there is still the connection, the community, the relationship to life and love to carry us onward. These things are our purpose, the purpose of religious community. I'm going to move on and talk about other things this morning that are also our purpose, but if that last bit was all you have the space to hear this morning, then I want you to hear it one more time. Even when all we can do is lay in the wagon, and this will be true of each one of us at some point, that laying in the wagon too is a way of belonging. we make the mistake of thinking we are a burden. We worry that we are not pulling our own weight. And in those moments, we tend to pull back, and in the pulling back, we are at risk of falling off of the wagon entirely. And I think it's fair to say that it is usually easier to stay on the wagon than it is to try to climb back up. The point of a wagon is to carry. The point of a wagon is to carry. We are a wagon. We are also the people who push, as well as the people who are carried. Please, universe, I need you to hear me when I say this. The point of a wagon is to carry. This is why we work so hard to sustain this community of faith. So it is here to be fierce, yes, but also so it is here when you need it. I'm going to shift now to the part about doing. But that is not a contradiction. It is a yes and. Of course there is doing. Whenever we talk about the need for rest, someone comes to me with the worry, but if nobody does anything, nothing will get done. Have you ever known everybody to do nothing? We would be extinct. And if it's time for us to be extinct, then perhaps that's the lesson in itself. But I don't believe in that, and I don't think you do either. I believe that you come here courageously week after week because you have a hunger, a deep, deep inner hunger. And this is a place full of people who share your hunger. You have a hunger for connection, for meaning, and for purpose. A hunger to belong to something and to be with people, other people like yourself, who believe that there is more to life than just carrying on, something more important than just getting the best you can get for your own self. We all want a good life. And while we experience a good life in many different expressions, what we share here is that we tend to find our core values to be aligned. So we come here for reassurance, for inspiration, for hope, and yes, sometimes for relief. And we come here to band together, to find ways to make a difference in our own lives and in the world. We are in the midst of a tumultuous time of political and social and economic unrest, wrapped in climate change and topped with a pandemic. And the election. And Remembrance Day. Now, Remembrance Day may not feel like an urgent thing on the list of those precarious Jenga blocks, but I think it's a useful metaphor in this topic. Hungry for peace and justice. We knew no matter the outcome of the election, we would be hungry for peace and justice. And we knew, in fact, that even though this outcome has brought us some relief, it may well also incite some danger and disruption. This is the start of a new chapter. It's not a done deal. So I want to say these two things to you. It's okay if at some point this week you felt like giving up, like it was all too much, like the news was too hard, like we were out of options and we may as well quit trying. And the other thing is that it's not true that we're out of options. They just might not be the options we once thought we had. So let's pause for words by this year's unofficial honorary poet in residence at Westwood, the Reverend Teresa Soto. And then I'll pull it together for you. From Spilling the Light. Blessed are the hungry. I know that you are hungry for justice, And sometimes when you fail, it feels like the times when you open the refrigerator door, look inside and close it, nothing having met your appetite. But there is always trying again. There is the fact that one just act is the beginning, that together we can build another. The gnawing hunger for a different future is one that will feed in the present. Your diligence, your tenacity, your willingness to learn, not just know, but also do. Hunger shaping how you nourish, feeding one another with the long spoons of your compassion until you're strong enough to feed the part of the world that you can reach. There is always trying again. There is the fact that one just act is the beginning, and together we can build another. A pacifist at heart, I don't know how with any certainty that all the solutions will be peaceful. Not if we're to protect the vulnerable in unjust situations, not if the cost is generations of victims. My philosophies have not earned another person's suffering. And the lessons that I'm always relearning is that there are no simple absolutes. The place we are in is layered with complexity. The drawing lines of hatred in the sand of our culture has not had a beneficial outcome. I am sometimes careless in my criticisms of structures of power, forgetting the difference between the human beings and the systems they are immersed in. And I will remain critical of the old structures, but I will work to tease apart the interwoven confusion of their purpose and their expressions. Here is what I really want to say to you this morning in a song, a gift of a song. This artist, Zo Tobi, makes purpose-driven rock for a life of purpose, reverence, and social action. Fans call his music soul medicine that reminds us who we are at our core. Zo is a husband, father, songwriter, and leadership coach for the progressive movement. His calling is to help people live lives they are proud of, and he loves puns and poop jokes. My best gift to you this morning is my new favorite song. As people who also love peace and justice, perhaps it will be yours too. He has given us permission to play and record this, and he has offered it as a gift to us. When the recording comes out to you, you will find links to his website and ways that you can contribute, participate, or learn more about the work that he does. He also has awesome merchandise. I offer you Blessed Unrest by Zo Tobi.
Oh, I am waking up to find my world between the dying and being reborn. I see what is and I see what could be. Can't close my eyes again and go back to sleep. Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. How can I change our course? Just a lonely voice Wish I could lose myself in all the noise. But if we all would rise, a generation proud with a mighty song, we could turn this world around. So fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Ancestors all behind, and before me every child. I bring the power of a long unbroken line. So when our time is through, I wanna know, did what we came to do for the future ones. So in our darkest days, may we all be strong and give our lives so life may go on. Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel. Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide.
This community will never give up hope. We may also need to remind one another of this truth. May our days be filled with blessed unrest. May we find purpose together in our lives and in our community. May we be vessels for the turning of the tide. Blessed be, and amen.
And now for the closing song of our service this morning, In Sweet Fields of Autumn, played by Jennifer McMillan.
In sweet fields of autumn, the gold grain is falling, the white clouds drift lonely, the wild swan is calling. Alas for the daisies, the tall fern and grasses, when wind swept and rainfall fill lowlands and passes. The snows of December shall fill Windy Hollow, the bleak rain trails after, and March wind shall fall. The stillness of death shall stoop over the water, the plover sweep low where the pale streamlets falter, but deep in the earth clod the black seed is living when spring sounds her bugles for rousing and giving.
We thank Mother Nature for bringing us snow to bring our imagery in the closing song to life in the most precious way. The poet Aurora Levins Morales writes these verses wrapped around vivid images of a better future. This is a condensed, the beginning and the ending, vivid images of a thriving, nurturing future. In the poem entitled Vahavta. Say these words when you lie down and when you rise up, when you go out and when you return, in times of mourning and in times of joy. Inscribe them on your doorposts, embroider them on your garments, tattoo them on your shoulders, teach them to your children, your neighbors, your enemies, recite them in your sleep here in the cruel shadow of empire. Another world is possible. When you inhale and when you exhale, breathe the possibility of another world into the 37.2 trillion cells of your body until it shines with hope. Then imagine more. And from Teresa Soto, one more time, there is always trying again. There is the fact that one just act is the beginning, and together we can build another. May there be peace and justice. May we find a way to hold them at the same time, for without justice, there can be no peace. Blessed be. Thank you for joining us for our service this morning. If you weren't here at the very beginning, we want to highlight one more time that next week's service is not a Westwood Sunday service. The Canadian Unitarian Council is hosting a national service. People from across the country, around the world, are invited to attend. So next Sunday, November 15th, if you go into our website where it says Sunday service or down into the calendar on the date, that link will be there that you see on your screen, the bit.ly/UU service. It will take you to the Canadian Unitarian Council where you enter your name and email, and it will click you through so that you can join the service. Thank you very much for joining you this morning. It's been an honor and a pleasure to mark Remembrance Day with you together.